invite you to open your Bibles, please, to Genesis. We're going into the second chapter, which is going to give more details about how man was formed, made, created. We looked at those three terms last time, and we're kind of continuing through this section before we get to the fall of man in chapter 3. But I think it's an interesting section of seeing how like the Garden of Eden, like the things that are taking place, and that's kind of a mystery. And some people think it's just continues to be a mystery. We have the angels guarding the place. Was it a real place, or was it just a motive of literature, where it's just a place where man came, and it's a beautiful place and really has no historical boundaries where it was. But we're going to learn this morning that when the Bible speaks in details, it might be something that we could realize. We're going to be talking about the Tigris. Well, we'll talk about the Euphrates River for sure. Is that still going? Is that still running? Well, you want to take a trip? Let's go. I don't want to go to part of the world, but we can. And the Tigris, it's kind of where they are. Do they join? And we'll find it about the Garden of Eden that way. So let's talk about why God put man in the Garden of Eden. And there are two terms that we need to deal with to understand that. It's just not one term. It just keep the garden. He makes, and your versions will read differently, but we read why he indeed put him there, and the whole purpose was to do what? And that, why did God put man in the garden? All right, my Bible says to dress it and to keep it. Like everybody thinks keep it is kind of with all of that. Instead of dress it, you have tend. What's that? Okay.
Anybody that does gardening knows that word.
Well, there weren't any weeds yet. It's pretty good. It's perfect. I like to have a garden like that. But this is true. So with that said, I just threw in something that's not true. Is the ground hadn't been cursed yet. But it was to keep. Now, what do those two words mean? You cultivate. What are we talking about that? What we look and I want us to see that. Let me just start with the Hebrew. It means to work and to be circumspect. There's the tending it. I'm working. Whatever is involved in working with that garden, I'm tending it, but I'm circumspect. I'm looking over it. I'm guarding it. I'm protecting it. Those are two concepts that those Hebrew words bring out. So it's idea of working it, and then being circumspect about it, making sure everything's fine. All the fruit here, what were we going to do? But it was he had a work to do. But the first word denotes the working. The other one says, I'm watching over it. He's tending it. And he's, so cultivate may have a concept that's good to you, but I think the two Hebrew words, if you look at the root, then we can kind of take it in to see, well, why he said to be involved in keeping it, dressing it, tending it, and to keep it. Those are two distinct words. And so I think that's something to consider when we speak about his work. We also know he's going to name the animals and all of those things, but that's what we find taking place after he breathed in his nostrils the breath of life and became a living soul. And so and out of the ground, Jehovah God made every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, as the tree of life also in the midst of the garden. Oh, just keep it that way. You never have to die. And the tree of life, and then the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that's going to be there too. So keep it, guarding it. The idea of tending after it is the concept that we're talking about. Working it and looking over it is the two concepts I have. Any other thoughts you'd like to add to that? All right, let's talk about what happened. What four rivers formed one river that watered the Garden of Eden? Now here comes the details of that, what we see. Let's start with that first one, Pishon. We see that's kind of hard to know right now. The name of the first is Pishon, or Pishon. That is which compasseth the whole land of Havilah. Real place, real area that we're speaking about. Let's put Saudi Arabia, above the Persian Gulf, all the way to Egypt. And what do we know that's there? Gold is the land, and it is good. It is good. And there is bdellium. What's that? You didn't look that up? You probably thought you said bdellium. It's bdellium. It's a fragrant rosin gum. I thought it was a rock, didn't you? Not. Myrrh. Fragrant alloys. That's the concept. And what's interesting, that in parts of Saudi Arabia, where we're going to be looking at, where maybe the Pishon River ran, they have 50 gold mines still working today. One of them very big. The highway that goes past that from north to south is the route that would take the bdellium, the myrrh and alloys, and trade that. That's the highway now. And it's working. In that area, and that's why I say Havilah is in that northern section. You come from Shur all the way over to Assyria and Iraq, is we're looking at, Garden of Eden may have been in that section. But the Pishon is still debatable. We just don't know what that is. But I want you to know that in that area, Havilah is where it ran. Gold is still mined today. And they still have maybe not the myrrh and aloes as they used to have, but they have all of these things that are present. The onyx stone is a precious gem, and they don't have anything going like that. But that was in that area, and Saudi Arabia has some of those abilities to have that. All right, the second river is what? We got Gihan, some of the translations have it. And it is the same that compassed the whole land of Cush. So when we think of Cush, what do you think of? First thing off the head, you looked at enough maps, you studied the Bible. Cush belongs where? That's off the map for where we are up in Havilah. And so that's right. It's in Ethiopia, over Egypt area. And so that river ran into the Garden of Eden. So now all of a sudden, you don't know where the Garden of Eden is. You think you know, and you try to place it here. That we have at least Bashan. We don't know exactly much about that. But the Gihan is one that we recognize, but we have to connect it with Cush. I wonder in Mesopotamia that at one time, that's where Cush people started. Cush, in that area, not in Egypt. They may came from there, from Mesopotamia to Egypt and become Cush as we know it. But you notice at the beginning of nations, look at after the flood in Genesis the 10th chapter, the sons of Ham was Cush, Mericum and Put and Canaan. And the sons of Cush were Sheba, Havilah, and Sabdath, and Raman, and Satia, and the sons of Ramah. We notice in verse 8, and Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Jehovah. Wherefore it said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before Jehovah. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. that happened over in Egypt and Ethiopia? That's where Cush. And so you begin to see that this wasn't the beginning of time. This wasn't the Garden of Eden time, but it was a time when after the flood came and these nations began to set forth. They hadn't spread. Where were they located? And it just so happens that the area of that area, they have what they know now as Cush. And they realize that that's another Cush that sometimes we don't think about because we think about Ethiopia. But if you could think your mind, maybe I could get over there, that area where Tigris is. I mean, where the Euphrates is right now. And there would be from Cush another river, and it would be called the Gahan. A lot of people say that fits. Just common sense. That would be where you might have a river. And they all have to intersect to water the Garden of Eden. I got the Euphrates flowing. Don't know about the Pashon yet, or Bashan. But the Gahan may not be coming from another continent and working with the Tigris, with the Euphrates River, but it may be coming from the northwest, which is the river there. Karun is the name of the river. It's not Gahan, so there's the problem. But it's coming from that direction, and it does intersect with the Euphrates at the Persian Gulf. So, unknown one, Euphrates is standard we have, that's still flowing. And he said, well, it didn't flow back then. Well, I'm assuming it did, because we have it, he named it, and it hasn't changed yet. Does the Tigris and the Euphrates intersect? As they entered into the Persian Gulf. And that area is very low, very warm, and it's still in that area between Iraq and the Persian Gulf, that southern part of Iraq and Iran. There are areas there. It's a lot of swampland. It's still low, still has water, and they have the little flatboats that go over that particular section where it's beginning to go into the Persian Gulf. And so that would be two that intersect so far. And we began to say, well, what about this third one? And the name of the third river is Hiddekel, and that which goeth in front of Assyria. So we know where Assyria is. It ain't over there in Ethiopia. It's somewhere going there. We're all over here in the Mesopotamia area. Havilah is that whole desert region between Egypt and Assyria. But he says that which goeth in front of Assyria. So what river is that goes right in front of Syria? Tigris. Got the Euphrates, got the Tigris. They join together at the Persian Gulf. And the Karun River, which is, I'm going to say, is possibility of the Gahan, it still flows. That area is known as Cush, and it will intersect as well. So we have a problem with knowing the Pashon. Could there be a river that once was, and now maybe we just have a river bed? What do we call those? What used to be a river, or we don't have rivers, but when it rains a lot, they would call it a wadi. A wadi. And there is a Wadi Arama that flows from the northern part. We talk about Egypt and Shur, and there's two places for Shur. They're just north and south of each other. But it goes all the way, and Havilah will connect all the way in that section. It will go toward Assyria. And the riverbed, ancient riverbed, they have discovered that's there. Now, it's not running in water. But there's been expeditions taken that they started at the Red Sea. Because some people think, well, it's the Nile. That Nile is not intersecting with the Tigris and Euphrates. And it's on another continent. So you got, well, in this particular area, could there be something that went that far from, you know how far you're into the mountains from the Red Sea, and they have found volcanic rock that has been there in a riverbed just flowing west or flowing east toward Assyria. They have found riverbeds where it's just that rock, and then closer to the Persian Gulf, you'll find it's been rock smooth. So where did those rocks come from? They're not indigenous to that area. They come from those mountains where the water would flow. And they've been rubbed smooth, but they're the same quartz and the same type of rock, volcanic rock, that they had up in those mountains. And so you begin to say, well, how did that all begin? Let's talk about Ishmael for a moment. Genesis, the 25th chapter, in verse 18. That Ishmaelites dwelt in Havilah. They dwelt in this section. They dwelt from Havilah unto Shur. Now there's two Shurs. One's as it enters into Egypt area and enters into the Mediterranean Sea. There's one a little south of that too. And he said, from Havilah to Shur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest toward Assyria. I start at Shur, which is in front of Egypt on this east side. And where did Ishmaelites, they had that northern territory of area where they would dwell there against all his brethren. In verse 18, he's warring with them all the time. But there was that section, it goes from Egypt to Shur, in the area from Shur to Havilah, and Havilah is the area where the gold is. And realize maybe that's the riverbed. It's a wadi, but I mean it is an ancient riverbed, what we might call the Pishon. And it's just, we don't know for sure, but it sure does make sense, because I've always said the Tigris is there and you got Cush. I said, it's a mystery. I don't know how all that worked together. But they have gotten those riverbeds, and they say, well, it's not a very big one. There's one section that this expedition is interesting to see them go. They have their own views, and people argue with them. But I just say it's an idea of looking at evidence of the Bible. I just appreciate the expedition for doing that. And they followed it. They had a four-wheel drive, and they went through some terrible things, but they found that those rocks down here in the Persian Gulf, where did they come from? They'd already been up there in the big bed where a lot of volcanic rock was in the mountains. So it would flow, and it would go toward that direction, and they followed that water bed, that bed, and it came up. Part of that, as it's going toward the Persian Gulf, is 1.7 miles wide. Think about that as a riverbed, because they have the sides on each side, and it's the Wadi of Ramah. It's there, and it does connect with the Tigris as it gets wider and wider as it gets closer to intersecting with those. And so what have four rivers in the Mesopotamia area, Havilah, that Arabian desert, Saudi Arabia. The gold would fit, the alum would fit, intersection would fit. But let's go back to Genesis, the 2nd chapter. And it's kind of said, well, how am I supposed to look at this? And I've looked at this in a different way, but I just run past a word. And that becomes a problem that I had to deal with. So we read, the river went out of Eden, verse 10, to water and garden, and from thence was parted and became four what? Heads. That's the thing. Because I got, well, out of the Garden of Eden, it's one river, and it went out of the Garden of Eden, and it flowed into four heads. No, that's not what is a head. That's the source. That's where the rivers begin. And so you realize maybe the Garden of Eden is near that swamp area where all the rivers, in the Wadi of Ramah, the Gihon, the Tigris, the Euphrates, and it's going now empty into the Persian Gulf. that what happens, the Garden of Eden, by the time it hit the Garden of Eden, it's one river. Where are their heads? We think just the other way. No, it's the heads. And what they do, they intersect and become one river, mighty water, to water the garden as it was there close to, as it now has emptied into the Persian Gulf. I say, so where the head of a river, where would you go? Where it all goes downhill, or where does it start? Headship. And so what he began to realize that these four rivers may be, there's a Karam, there's a Gahan, that's a question mark. No one's trying to force that down your throat. But the Pashan goes across Saudi Arabia. And it's where Ishmaelites were involved in that northern part, and Mesopotamia is around there. But you have where these rivers start, and they all flowed in that area, and that's where the Garden of Eden may have been. Look at the shoreline in 6000 BC. Persian Gulf was there. It's a possibility that is where the Garden of Eden is. Just a possibility. But how did we get there? No, you don't know. You don't know anything about the Pashan, and you go online, you have no idea about what that is, and God wanted it to be a mystery, and we just have a motif. It's just a literary device. Doesn't have anything to do with reality of geography, but we know the Bible doesn't work that way. The Bible is very accurate. And so it may be a possibility that's where the Garden of Eden, because those four rivers intersected the Garden of Eden to form one river. And then things formed that Persian Gulf and so forth. And that fits with trying to identify those. And Pashan may not be it, but there have been now evidence for that. And it fits with Genesis 25:18. It fits with Genesis 10 about where Cush could have originated from. And as they spread across the world, earth. And there would be, Haran is connected with Cush. There's evidence for that. The Bashan, it's just people following the riverbed from Shur, from Egypt, and all the way off the Saudi Arabia desert. It took them a long time. But they followed it, and what had happened, they thought that riverbed was so small until they realized that there had been sand dunes that covered and as they went further, they realized they were covering that riverbed now. And it's 1.7 miles across, that ancient riverbed. It's warm. It is low in the sense of where water could come through, and it would be a perfect place for a perfect garden. And so it's just something interesting that we look at and realize that when the Bible makes specifics, I think we can follow that. Where does the evidence go? But there's two rivers. They're pretty sure about the Karun. They have no problem. That's not the Nile River. It's not over in Ethiopia. But that's where we think of Cush all the time, because we read about that in our Bibles. But and they originated ancient, it may very well been that Karun, what they know is the Karun River. And there's you got Iraq and you got Iran, and you can't get real close to that. But the one expedition took a picture of a bridge. It says it's not going over the Tigris, it's not going over the Euphrates, it's going over the Karun River there, and it's still flowing. But there's just an ancient riverbed that people assume possibility of being the river Pashan, which no one has been able to determine for sure. Any thoughts on that, Liners? The head got me thinking. I'm looking at it already backwards. Going to four heads. Well, four heads, yeah, up there. They intersected one together, but their heads were west and the east, and two from the north. The northwest. And but the Bible said they intersected. They came together in one, and they would then, from looking at Garden of Eden this way, they branch out into four heads, four beginnings. I think that's logical. Anything you want to add?
Brother Jerry, I kind of agree with that. Actually, I've heard that before. And here's what makes it tough. We don't know what happened, the changes that took place after the flood. And some even believe that the earth might have been all one piece and then broke out into different continents. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not.
No, but have you heard of climate change? Oh, where have you been, boy? No, that's true. I do know, and we didn't talk about this, but when he made earth, there was water above and below. But there was a water canopy over an atmosphere of over the earth in its atmosphere. So atmospheres have changed. I think that's been pretty evident. So what happened at the flood, that water canopy went down. That's why they say people don't live as long and that sort of thing because of the rays of the sun. So the atmosphere could be a lot of different. Not that they had to break up. I think a lot of our mountain ranges, that is because of the flood, because they erupted from the deep. Mountains were formed as we have them today. But that atmosphere is pretty good evidence that that indeed that would be something, and that emptied out. That was above the earth in the atmosphere of the water. He just divided the waters from above and below, and he put the waters in the seas and all that sort. But the rains came, but it was empty there. And then the eruption from the sea goes cause the great flood we had worldwide. So authorities say that canopy changed the atmosphere, and people started not living as long and all of that. And I've been up and look at the dinosaur tracks, and they have a idea where also the animals were much bigger in that time frame, and they weren't mean. You have big fish that are pariahs and so forth, and they've raised them with trying to imitate that atmosphere, and they get big, and they're not mean. Some of those dinosaurs were friendly, and all of that. So we don't know, but there's the climate. I said climate change way we look at it, but the atmosphere has changed. I think because where do those waters above go? There's a flood that took place. He emptied them. Any other thoughts? Okay. Question number 21. What did God clearly point out to the man regarding the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? So what did he say? Not to eat. And you know when your dad says don't do it, what are you going to do? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So you shouldn't say don't do it. But he did clearly let him know that you're not supposed to do that, take that. So he put him in the garden, verse 15, to dress it and to keep it. And Jehovah God commanded the man, saying, of every tree of the garden thou mayest eat, you may freely eat. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. And here's the consequences. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. That's what is going to happen. So there is the positive command, which is negative to one of you wanted to test that, but he clearly sets forth that you're not to have it. So how's the devil going to be, the serpent, how is he going to be using that in accusing God to the woman? He knows. Let's go with David.
Yeah, Jerry, you were bringing up something. The devil wanted to impugn God's motive. It's like, God doesn't want you to know what he knows. That's why he doesn't want you to do it. And then secondly, he added the word God.
Yeah.
And, Martin Luther, when he's translating the Bible into German, that common German people can understand, he added the word only in faith only sentences. So just adding one word can really change the meaning of something.
That's right. Knots in a devil's tail. You ever heard that sermon? And he did. And the reason I bring up that now is that the word devil means accuser. And that really fits, doesn't it? I'm accusing God to the woman. I'm accusing him, as you say, that with he doesn't want you to know what he knows. And what does that do to you? Well, I begin to chip away at my trust in God or my trust in somebody else, and we become enemies. But he said the knowledge of good and evil, keep them, and we're going to see their innocent state, especially regarding nakedness. They're going to be in that state before sin had entered into their experience. But that's a clear command, and you're going to take God's will. God, you're not really a wise father, because you know when you do that, that's exactly what they're going to do, and you just set a trap. And God wouldn't do that. Well, God did that. And what are you going to do? Not give boundaries? You can't do this, can't do this, because you know the moment you say don't do that, that's what they're going to do. And that's on them. But you're clearly stated out, and you talk about the day that you shall die. And we'll talk about that in a few moments as well. So we got man clearly understanding that, and before we find that woman comes along. And so we ask the question, why was woman created? And what is God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. So I'll make him a help meet for him. I usually put those together as a help meet without understanding that, but really there's two words that you're going to be a help and you're going to be suitable to the man. And from a bachelor standpoint, why do I need a woman? I got dogs. I got all the dogs. I'm naming them. I've got pets. I got all the animals I have, and yet it's not good for man to be alone. There was something missing, and it wasn't his interaction with the animals, but he said he's going to make something that's suitable to him. And of course, what did we learn in Genesis 1? When he made man, male and female, and he blessed them, and God said, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. How are they going to multiply? Well, men can have babies now, so you don't need a woman. We're really wise, 21st century, aren't we? No, it still ain't going to happen. You got male and female, and they produce babies. And that's good. That's good. And that's how they're going to start replenishing the earth and multiplying. And that's the way God would have that. But it wasn't good for man to be alone. And that's why when you study the New Testament, it's not good for a man to touch a woman. Whoa! The sexual relationship's not good. That's why you look, what's the context of that? It's dealing with the present distress. You won't be divided if they come and torture your wife before your eyes because you don't denounce Jesus. It's better to be single then. That's what it means. But that's been good. That's going to fulfill God's plan for man, for them to be together, and we'll deal with a sexual relationship. But woman was suitable to man. No animals were. And he needed to understand that. Thank you. Any other question about why woman was created? And you talk about the animal kingdom. They have their male and female, and they bring forth after their kind, and we as human beings do that as well. But women are the fairer, and in a sense we see they're the weaker vessel. Have we learned that in our world today? Has that come to light? You be a weightlifter and you changed over. I'm determined I'm going to be a woman. I'm going to enter the Olympics, and you win a lot of medals. You swim better. You have muscle mass and all those sorts of things. They're different. But womb man, made in the likeness of God. We saw it in Genesis 1. Here's how they come about and why this woman was created. And that's a beautiful thing. All right. Question 23. What points regarding the marriage relationship do you gather from Genesis 2, verses 18 through 25? So let's lay the scene. Out of the ground of Jehovah, God formed every beast of the field, in verse 19. Now, that's already said it's not good for man to be alone. Now he tells you about what Adam is doing. He says, and they brought them unto the man to what he would call them, and whatsoever the man called every living creature, that was the name thereof. So God formed every beast of the field, every bird of the heavens, and brought them unto the man. Who brought the animals to the man? God did. One was not created. She's not there yet. No help meet that's there. And the man gave names to all cattle, to all birds of the heaven, to every beast of the field, but for man there was not found a help meet suitable for him. So Jehovah God caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof, and the rib which Jehovah God had taken from the man made he a woman, and brought her on the man. Brings the animals, the name. He brings a woman to the man. And the man said, this is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Still innocent. So what do you see about marriage that you gather from the beginning when God created woman for man and to be wife and husband? What you had to think about that a little bit. What do you learn from just this text? Yeah. Yeah. We had to kind of bring it up to date, male and female. We have to kind of start there. That's why I don't want to give ground when we say, well, this is same-sex marriage. No, it's not marriage. It's not marriage. You can't have that turf. Marriage is what's instituted by God, and it is male and female. Well, I am transitioning to be a woman, so we're going to get that done. No, you're still going to be a biological male. And that doesn't change. And we just kind of accept the terminology. No, that's not marriage. God instituted marriage, male and female. And they were perfect, suitable for one another, sexually, producing after their kind, all that is there. And so this was from the beginning, and we're kind of moving now to the New Testament. What did Jesus talk about? What happened from the beginning? Matthew, the 19th chapter, the discussion here is about now separating. It's about divorce. And Jesus says, I'm going to take you back to the beginning. So these points are made. And so let's see what points Jesus made when people are saying, can we put away for any cause? In verse 4, and he answered, have you not read, well, we're back here reading, that he who made them from the beginning made them, Derek's point, male and female, thank you, male and female, and for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall become flesh. So that there are no more two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, this is what he adds. Back here in Genesis, was it to be permanent? If you think like Jesus was. From the beginning, let not man put us under. What God had joined together, they are one flesh. That sexual relationship is right within that. They're not to separate. So there's the permanency of marriage. There's the people involved in marriage. Notice God, he didn't date to find her. God brought the woman to him. Wasn't anybody to date. So he brings the one. He instituted it. It's God. He brought them together. Now, what else says this is going to be a permanent relationship that we need to consider? What is it? A man shall leave what? His father and mother. Did Adam and Eve have father and mother? Nope. I wonder if that's for other generations. Paul said, yes, it is. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, he'll bring it in. He'll bring Genesis 2:24 and the fact that it is now for us to follow. And we need to remember that of these things for us to do today, we can go from the beginning, when God said it hasn't been so from the beginning. This is what it has been from the beginning. So the permanency of that, man has not instituted marriage, God has, and we move on from there. We'll follow up on that as we finish up lesson 1 and go into lesson 2 next time, Lord willing. Any comments before we leave? Before we close? Okay, thank you.